Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. This is the Tim Laskus Show, episode 003. And today's featured guest is Andrew Berkowitz. He is an entrepreneur, a blogger, a podcaster, and a speaker. He's interviewed dozens of top entrepreneurs, VCs, and leaders in startup companies worldwide. And he founded globalstartupmovement.com. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests, entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tim Laskus Show, and I'm super excited to have Andrew Berkowitz as a guest today. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
No worries, Tim. Good to be here.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. And, you know, you were telling me that you love to work a lot, and that's your real dedication, your passion. But you also said you go to the gym every now and then. So is that what you do to kind of unwind and maybe burn off a little steam and just kind of get things straight?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's definitely important to have some sort of escapism on the side, so you're not burning yourself out. But yeah, for me, the gym, while I like to say physically fit, it's more of a mental game for me, right? So I have my morning routine where I try to get up at 5 every morning and hit the gym, and that's much more of a mental win for the day than it is physical fitness for me.
Sure, absolutely. And I don't know if you're like me when I'd go to the gym, and sometimes if I build it into my schedule, I go, and whether I want to be there or not. And, you know, there are days that I do enjoy doing it, but then almost 100% of the time when I leave, I feel great. I'm glad that I made time to go to the gym. And again, it feels good, you know, not only just physically, you know, you look better, but mentally, like you said, it really changes your whole mental state, and it helps start your day off really good. And you must hate as a regular going to the gym when January rolls around, because then you have all this 2 week window of a mad rush, and then they start to kind of fall off like flies though.
Well, so actually it's interesting because usually the New Year's resolutioners, they're not hitting the gym at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh,
so
okay.
You do see an uptick, but not as much as, you know, I would assume around 6, 7 p.m.
Got ya. So you beat all that mad rush.
Yep.
Well, excellent. Well, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally. What are you currently working on?
Absolutely. So full-time, I run operations for a startup called TradeVersity. And so what we are is a peer-to-peer marketplace platform for university communities. And so kind of similar idea to Craigslist. Students, faculty, and staff can buy and sell goods and services on our platform. And the marketplace is exclusive to active EDU email addresses at the university.
That's excellent.
And so, yeah, with TradeVersity, we're currently at 20 schools with our consumer product, pretty much on the East Coast from Penn State to University of South Carolina. We're at every big school. And then on the flip side, we're actually releasing our enterprise product later this year. And so that's going to be much more B2B, selling directly to universities and corporations, as opposed to our consumer model, which is just marketing directly to people on campus, and we don't deal directly with the university. And so full-time, I'm working for TradeVersity, and then my kind of side hustle is a podcast called The Global Startup Movement. And really what I'm trying to do with that is really uncover stories of entrepreneurs and VCs all around the world and kind of tie their story and experience into the local startup scene and local culture. And so with that, I try to focus outside the typical startup hubs of, Silicon Valley, New York, London, and really try to focus throughout Africa, Europe, the Midwest, Asia.
Wow. So you have a very broad reach. That's great. Getting back to what you were doing with the universities. So is it a package that they would purchase from you? They make initial purchase, or is it a free kind of experience for them to get in initially?
Well, so for our enterprise product, it's and we're still kind of exploring that model from the pricing side of things. But essentially, the university would pay us either annually or semesterly to implement the software for their community. And so it's really a student life enhancement.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, an interesting component is we also have the ability to generate revenue for the university through sponsor listings. And so in our consumer model, we've seen that local businesses are willing to pay us anywhere between $250 to $500 for every 1,000 users in the marketplace. And so we're very confident in our ability to generate a good amount of revenue for a university, especially the ones that have anywhere between 20, 30,000 students.
Wow, that's exciting. So it sounds like you are very busy, and with your podcast, kind of jumping back to that, is that you mentioned something about stories, and stories are so powerful, and it's stories that people connect with, and you think of movies or television programs that people love to watch or they're intrigued in. It's the story of whatever they were watching that really just kind of touched them. And so I think that's very powerful, and that's great that you're going after that story, and which is just a powerful thing.
100%. I mean, that's something I actually learned over time. I mean, when I first started the podcast, it was really I wasn't too focused on uncovering stories from the guests. It was much more having them talk about their local startup scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much capital is available to startups. How much talent is available in the city, and kind of over time. Just getting feedback from my audience really started to personally understand the importance of telling a story with the platform.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of started off as kind of an information-based program and just gathering facts and information, which is what people want and often find useful. But if you can connect them emotionally through that story, it's so powerful. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but the reality shows, and the only thing I kind of watch is some of the Alaska shows, like the Gold Rush and Alaska: The Last Frontier, and they follow different people around, and you learn their personal story, and that's what really is the main attraction. Maybe you love Alaska or you love gold mining, but it's the story of the people that they follow around that is the real attraction. So that's wonderful. Well, during your journey as an entrepreneur and staying very busy, and I'm sure you've stumbled upon several resources that have been helpful for you along the way. Could you recommend any advice or tips, or even a resource that you found that, man, you just can't live without, and that's really probably changed how you view business?
And so my answer to this has actually changed in just the past few weeks. So I used to always be a huge advocate of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I read that book I think it was maybe 4 years ago, and just changed my whole perspective on business and life. And recently, a couple months ago, I stumbled upon a audiobook on YouTube, actually, called The Laws of Success. And it's by Napoleon Hill. It's 16 pamphlet. I guess it's on YouTube. It says essay. So it's really kind of a book in itself. But it's basically 16 pamphlets that Napoleon Hill wrote along with his mastermind, and it is. It's even above Think and Grow Rich in terms of content and actionable advice that you can implement, and it goes very deep. And so if I could recommend one thing, it would be go on YouTube, type in Napoleon Hill, The Laws of Success, listen to the entire thing, take notes, and listen to it again.
Excellent. Well, that's a wonderful resource. And so I highly recommend people go out there. I know Napoleon Hill's done some wonderful stuff. He's been around forever for, as far as, his material. And I don't know how far back when he started. But was he kind of one of the first kind of pioneers in this, in his kind of theory of, making money and doing that? I don't know. I don't know if you know the answer, but I just know.
I mean, I'm not 100% sure. He kind of wrote his material in the early to mid 1900s.
And so
But
I
yeah.
think he was just a real pioneer and ahead of his time, and it's, for that information to still be very relevant and powerful today, it says a lot about, who he was and how he thought, and for people to really, pay attention to that. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. Now, on your entrepreneurial journey, when did you decide this is the path I want to take, and I think I can do this? How did you finally make that step? A lot of people get stuck in dreaming about being an entrepreneur, and they get stuck in their job and they never make that leap. But, how did you get started, and what kind of pushed you over the edge to jump right in?
So I think it was much easier for me to take that leap just being so young when I did. I think it's much harder to say, okay, I'm just going to quit my job and go for it when you have kids and a mortgage and a family to support, right? So, I mean, for me, I always felt deep down that I wanted to do something different with my life. And it really, so I graduated from Virginia Tech, spring 2015, and took a role as a project manager at a big bank in Washington, D.C. And it took me about 3 months before, I just, decided the corporate environment. I was just suffocating in that. And so I didn't really have a plan, but I knew I had to quit. And so I quit kind of with the having faith that I would figure it out. And I haven't figured it out, but I am in the process of kind of figuring it out along the way. So
Sure. Well, that's awesome. So it took you a 3 long months to make that decision.
yeah.
But it's awesome that you mentioned the word suffocation, and I think a lot of people could probably identify with you in feeling suffocated in their field of work and having a job. And yeah, you're right. When you're young, man, that's the time to strike while the iron is hot. And there really has been a shift in today, as far as, especially with technology. And it seems that, a lot of the young generation has a handle on that, and they're the ones starting the big companies and are going big and going bold. But, maybe 20, 30 years ago, it was still like, it was only kind of the old guys or old women, those who had been around for a while. You need to have experience before you, kind of go down that journey. And, all of that's been thrown out the window. Now it's, being young and being a go-getter and going after it. Gary Vaynerchuk is, there's so many young people and people who are quite a bit older who follow him, and, just eat that up, just tackle your dreams, go after it, seize the day. But he also has the same message that being an entrepreneur isn't for everyone. Not everybody's cut out. Then there are some people who probably enjoy the dream of being an entrepreneur more so than actually doing it, because and you'll find out pretty quick, and I'm sure you can attest to that it's not all fun and games, and a lot of times it's easier to have a job and go in at 8 or 9 and leave at 5 or 6 at the end of the day, and go home and do whatever you want, go to the golf course, or go work out, hang out with your buddies and all that stuff. But as an entrepreneur, your days never end. They just kind of run into each other. Is that right?
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs are really the only people who will work 24/7 to avoid a 9 to 5 job. But I do not really. I don't agree with the statement that entrepreneurship is a young man's game. What I think, kind of on a macro level, the baby boomer generation has just been story told their entire lives of, a certain narrative
Mm-hmm.
where, I mean, 70s, 80s, it just wasn't practical to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I mean, it just took so much capital back then to
Mm-hmm.
really start something up. And me personally, I feel incredibly blessed and grateful to be alive in the era that I am, where there is so much opportunity and the gatekeepers have really, lost control. I mean, really anyone with talent nowadays can get on the map
Mm-hmm.
if they put in the work and if they're good enough.
Absolutely. And there's so many young guys that have made it, and Mark Zuckerberg being, one of the more well known that people are looking up to, and they're like, man, if he can do it, how he did it, I can do it. And it gives people hope. And I think that's awesome. And that kind of goes back to the story, and when, for you to have a podcast and to have, some young guys who are really hustling and out there just killing it. And for someone who's, sitting at home, at their computer or, just working out or walking around and listening to that story and that message and to get inspired is just incredible. And you never know, through your podcast, who you're going to touch and who's going to be inspired and make some real changes in their life because of something that they heard from one of your guests or even something that you shared. So, that's a real powerful thing. Well, when you were growing up, what were you kind of told or by family members, about money and finances? Were you told to, you know, go get an education, get a good job, and were you ever kind of educated about how to budget your money? Like, what kind of messages did you receive growing up about money and finance?
So I mean, it's interesting. I kind of grew up, typical middle class, where my parents did a very good job of separating me from any monetary concerns, and the budget. I never kind of, knew how much they made, was really aware of where the money was going. Just kind of had my childhood right, and I think that's how a good amount of millennials grew up, and I think it was a comfortable upbringing, but at the same time, so many kids are graduating from college, and we've never learned about money. We've never taught really financial skills or anything about investing from our parents, from school. And so, I mean, me personally, I had kind of the typical, just get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job. And I mean, I kind of always, I followed that path up until 3 months at the bank, right? And then I kind of shifted course. But I never really had any special education when it comes to money.
Yeah, and it's so frequent that I hear that same kind of answer to that we're almost, it's like we're supposed to know, we're supposed to be born with that idea of, how to manage money and how to grow money and, whatever it might be. But, you mentioned, get a good education and a good job and then, good luck. So, when you got your education and got your good job and then you went and gave that up, so to speak, gave up the good job, what kind of messages or kind of direct statements from your family and friends around you? Did they think you were nuts? Did anyone around you question you and say, what are you doing, Andrew? Man, you're kind of losing it. You need to get back and get yourself a good, secure job and stop all this entrepreneurial nonsense.
I mean, just about every single person in my life, like my family and my friends, and I think it's very, very common, right? And it's sad because one of the reasons, or at least in my opinion, when someone that goes down that path, it's hard for most people to support that because them. And if they can do it, that means you can do it. And it really exposes you for not taking the leap.
Yeah, that absolutely. That's key. I think a lot of times it's more not about you as the entrepreneur taking the leap, but it's about those around you who are somewhat whether they say it or not, jealous, envious, and insecure that, my goodness, I could never do that. I would love to do that, but I couldn't gather up the strength or the courage to be able to go out on my own. I'd probably fall on my face. I'd probably end up in the gutter and, and on the streets and homeless. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it is about other people and their own insecurities, not being able to do it more so. And I had the same message when I had, back in 2006, I sold everything and quit my secure job, moved to Costa Rica. And man, everybody around me told me I was an idiot. I mean, they thought I was nuts. And I was working as a psychologist at the time, and they said, I think you're the one that needs medication, not your patients. And it wasn't until later when I was married down in Costa Rica and I had a lot of family and friends come and visit. And someone came up to me, one of my colleagues that I'd worked with, who came down, and he said, man, I didn't support you when you did this. I thought you were nuts. But he said, I'm just so proud of you now. And he said, I would be so scared. And came out and told me, which most people won't tell you. And so he said, I would be so scared to do this. But man, I am blown away by what you've done. It is inspiring. And so that was the first time that I knew that it was more about other people and not me.
And so when I was going through that, when I had, first just quit, I came across a quote that really resonated with me at the time and really kind of motivated me. I actually printed it out and put it on my wall right next to my bed. And it's a Jeff Bezos quote. And it's, entrepreneurs must be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time.
Great quote.
I completely agree.
And who said that again?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. That's awesome. That's incredible. I love quotes, and I like to collect them myself and put them in places where I can see them. And that's important because people can collect quotes and different things and then put them in a book, in a binder, and close it and never look at it or see it. So, you got it in full view. And that's what I always recommend people do is man, if something motivates you, there's a quote or there's something you're working towards, have a picture, have a quote, have that out and have it everywhere. Have it on your mirror in your bathroom. So that's the first thing you see when you get up in the morning. So, with all this drive that you have and going out and really trying to, make your own, there must have been times when it was stressful and, mentally where you felt like, wow, this is more of a struggle than I thought. Has there been a moment when mentally it was just very, very draining and that you just kind of had to, pull yourself up and get over that? And what coping skills did you use, if any?
Yeah, and so I would say September and October of last year, 2016, was really the most intense and stressful 2 months of my entire life. So with TradeVersity, we had last spring we were at 7 schools, and this past fall semester we launched an additional 13 schools. And so, wow. In addition to launching those 13 schools, I started putting out 2 podcasts a week, and was also managing 50 campus reps, which are college interns that we have at our campuses. And so all of that together, it was it was an intense couple of months. It was literally wake up and just work and sprint every day until I fell asleep for 2 months. Mm-hmm. And so really my biggest learning out of that period, or the biggest thing for me that came out of that period was my morning routine and how I like to keep my morning routine sacred. So absolutely nothing can ever interrupt or get in the way of my morning routine. Mm-hmm. And what that basically was, I'm not sure if you've read The Miracle Morning.
No,
but it's kind of a subset of that. So basically, I always do some sort of physical activity when I wake up. If I can't go to the gym, I'll just do some push-ups, jumping jack sit-ups. After that, I'm not that good at this, but I try to always take a cold shower every day. Oh. The change in state that you experience when you get in versus when you get out it's incredible. But I'm not always mentally strong enough in the morning to do it.
Now, I'm sure the listeners out there are going, well, cold showers, what? So, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that wants to know what's the longest you've stayed in a cold shower or ice bath.
Well, so it's interesting. Once you get over that initial like minute or two at the beginning, it's fine. It's not a problem. And just it really just jolts your nervous system, and you have so much energy when you get out. If you can do it, it's absolutely worth it. And a way to kind of ease into it, just do your normal shower, and then at the end, turn it to cold and see how long you can last.
And just don't stick your head under it. Put your whole body under there.
Oh yeah, you got it exactly. And then after that, I always try to get some sort of meditation in. I used to use an app called Headspace. Now I use an app called BuddhaFi. But there are so many guided meditation apps out there that you can use. But some sort of meditation is important because it's very. I think it's very important to be able to pull back from your emotions and thoughts for a certain amount of period during each day, and that's what meditation does for me.
Wow, you just given us some gold right there, Andrew. I mean, just to kind of recap is one. It sounds like you build into your schedule time for you to do this physical activity, and then you kind of leave it up to yourself of what you're going to do, whether you're going to be doing push-ups or going to the gym, or I don't know if you like to do burpees at 5 o'clock in the morning. That would be tough. Probably better before breakfast than after, though.
Yeah.
But, and then taking those ice baths, that made me think of Wim Hof. Are you familiar with Wim Hof?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's excellent. I don't know how I stumbled across him a couple of months ago. And I think he was on Lewis Howes's podcast, and then he was also on Joe Rogan on his podcast. And he is a character. But there's a lot of research apparently and scientists who are following him and taking him very serious, and they're starting to have some findings out there that support his whole theory about I guess the physiological and mental benefit of being cold and putting yourself in an ice bath or ice water. And I don't know how many world records he holds. He hiked up to, I think, base camp in Mount Everest in shorts, no shirt, just shorts.
Oh yeah. I mean, the first time I heard about him was actually on the Tim Ferriss show, and
Okay.
I mean, for kind of the world that he opened me up to is more of, we very, very, we underestimate the power of the mind, right? The power of your brain is, I think it's an area of science which needs a lot more research than it gets.
Yeah, it's the unknown because your thoughts, it's unlike if you break an arm or something, it's easy to get an X-ray and see where that break is, repair it, and you're good to go. But mentally, when people have issues going on and struggles and mental illness, it's a little bit more difficult to figure out how to help them. But you've given us some incredible, and just to mention this, you brought up Headspace, and is it BuddhaFi? BUDIFY?
I believe it's BUDDIHFY.
BUDDIHFY. And I've heard about Headspace, and some of the professional athletes that I work with like to use Headspace, but I haven't heard of BuddhaFi. So those are two great resources for the listeners out there. Thanks for bringing those up. And so during this journey, what has been some of the most gratifying moments, or maybe one that stands out the most where you said to yourself, yes, this is me. This is the path that I was meant to go down?
So, I mean, to be honest, I would say that this past New Year's, I mean, it's always a high when we've closed 2 funding rounds with TradeVersity. And so, closing those rounds is always very a good moment. But I would say really this past New Year's where, I was on the back end of the September, October that I mentioned, and I had a chance to just kind of recharge, let my brain replenish all of its neurotransmitters, and just kind of reflecting on the past year and just where I was relative to a year before, just the personal growth that I felt in the moment was just. Just kind of, I knew that this was the right path, and I made the right decision by leaving my safe, cushy corporate job.
Well, that's awesome. And so for every entrepreneur out there who goes down that road, and if they stick with it long enough, to be able to say you've had that moment, it's just got to be incredible. And Andrew, you've been a wonderful guest, and we're going to wrap it up. But before we end, this is your time. I'm going to turn it over to you to let people know how they can find you online, and where they can find your podcast, and just connect with you online, and just get in touch, and maybe even pick your brain, or if they're interested in any of your services that you offer.
Absolutely. So my podcast, it's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all the channels. It's called the Global Startup Movement. And you could find our website is thegsm.co. And in terms of reaching out to me, my email is andrew@globalstartupmovement.com.
Andrew@globalstartupmovement.com. Andrew Berkowitz, you've been awesome. You've been fantastic. I appreciate your time. And man, I will definitely be in touch, and I look forward to hearing more about your journey. Thank you.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskus.com.